Rod Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. And good afternoon to y'all. How you doing today? Welcome to Insights and Straight Talk with your host, Rod Duff, and of course, the ever-present producer Barbie. If you're joining us live today or catching us later, let me start out with something real honest, deep down with you. Most people don't lose their footing in life because they're lazy or unmotivated or even incapable. They lose it in the space between what was and what's next. And that's the space, that transition zone. That's where fear gets loud, confidence gets real quiet, and identity starts to ask hard questions. Because somewhere along the way, many of us were asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know what? Very few of us ever asked the far more important question, how are you going to make that happen when life changes the rules? That's why today's conversation matters. Today, we are joined by David Petrovay, a career counselor, coach, and what I'd call an employment strategist to the truest sense of the word. David has spent over 20 years helping people navigate career change, job transition, and professional reinvention. But here's what makes his voice different. He didn't just study this work, he actually lived it. After 34 years working in schools for the blind across the country, David reached the moment of honest introspection, a moment many of you listening will recognize, where he realized that opportunity alone wasn't enough. Because opportunity, as David so clearly puts it, is not a probability without a plan. That sentence alone should make you sit up straighter. In today's economy, careers don't unfold in straight lines anymore. They zigzag, right? We talk about this all the time, the journey. They reset. They get disrupted by technology, burnout, career giving, layoffs, health, or simply the realization that once fit, no longer does. And yet, so many people carry unnecessary shame around transition, as if changing direction means you failed. David's work pushes back on that idea. He helps people see that career change isn't a collapse, it's a recalibration. That clarity matters more than confidence when everything feels uncertain. And that work should support your life, not consume it. This is not a motivational talk. This is not a hustle sermon, and it's definitely not one-size-fits-all formula. This is a grounded, thoughtful conversation about a few things. Surviving change without losing yourself. Making intentional decisions instead of reactive ones. Designing a path forward that honors both ambition and well-being, right? And for our audience, the great middle class, this matters deeply because you are not behind. You're not broken, and you're not starting over from zero. You are starting at a threshold. You're standing right there. So settle in. Bring your questions. And let's talk honestly about how to navigate career transition with clarity, confidence, and purpose. And with that, David, welcome to Insights and Straight Talk. How you doing?
All right, and thank you for having me today, Rod, as a guest on your podcast. And there is so much information that was packed into the introduction that we could probably talk for days just on what that content was.
Yeah, well, we do. Oh, wow. We already got a question. Are you kidding me? 2 questions. Or no, somebody's saying hi. Do you know a Riley Massey by any chance?
No.
All right. Well, Riley Massey says hi.
Hi, Riley.
Anyway, so Yeah. So we've already got 100 people on. This is obviously an important conversation, and I've been looking forward to this. I've gone, you can see I'm up there in age. I've gone through a couple transitions myself. The most recent one, I started out the manufacturer of equipment and sales. I built up a company over 30 years. And just a couple of years ago, I wound that all down and started doing this. So that was a pivot. So I've been very interested in this. And how did you get into coaching and all that? Just you saw the way the world was working and oh, you know what? I tell everybody to turn off their stuff. And remember, I said we're not perfect.
There you go.
I said that. Okay, so tell us your journey.
So first of all, I want to go back to something that you said, which was, what do I want to be when I grow up? I've modified that with one word, Rod, which is, what do I want to be as I grow up?
Oh,
because we're done growing. Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So it's my journey as I was growing up. And I started, you said, well, let's take a look at where you might have been in your 40s. But if I need to back up a bit in terms of how I worked my way into counseling to begin with. My undergraduate degree was in psychology. And this was during the Vietnam War. And they said, well, with a degree in psychology, you could either be a buyer in a department store or head off to the military. So not a lot of choices back then with what you could do.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, I was always fascinated by what makes people tick. And this is a perfect opportunity for that. So I finished that degree. And then what's next as I grow up? Because Vietnam was a hot ticket item back then, and I was number 19 in the draft lottery, it looked pretty good that I'd end up over there. But when I went through the physical, I had a little, like a 3x5 note from a doctor that says, this guy has a bum knee and he'll never make it through basic training. So as a result of that, that was my ticket into graduate school, where I learned to work with the blind. And it was really funny.
Yeah.
And how did I get there? Well, when I went over to the department, I interviewed the head of every specialty. No, that won't work. Nah, I couldn't do that. When they finally got to the blind, I said, and that was the last person. I said, I could do that. I could work with blind people. Had no experience at all working with blind people. But then I headed off to grad school. And believe it or not, I earned a master's degree in 9 months.
Wow.
Okay. Because they were so hurting for people in special ed at the time.
Yeah, of course.
A real shortage. So I did my student teaching. And as I was completing that, I remember the principal approaching me saying, I don't know what your plans are after you graduate, but if you're interested, we'd like to hire you. So that is what got me into that setting. And I did that for 34 years, starting out as a classroom teacher. And I did a variety of other roles. And one of them was I did a career development specialist role. And we created the title for that. So for 8 years, I worked with high school age students, helping them plan for their futures. And I still stay in touch with them about all of that.
Oh, wow. So you literally led them through education into employment, into being able to stand on their own 2 feet, so to speak.
That's right. And to feel good about who they were as people.
Yeah.
That as a person who was blind, they weren't a second-class citizen. Okay. They had value. So that was a big part of it, was building self-esteem and self-confidence in these kids. So then, now that was all at the University of Pittsburgh. And then I went off to the University of Arizona because I moved to Tucson and I started a second master's degree. This time it was in counseling and I loved it. it was not like going to school. It was, I had found my niche in life.
There it is.
And the classes were a lot of work, but because I was so dedicated to it, they felt effortless. And then after finishing that, I worked, as I said, as a career development specialist at the high school level. And then what's the next logical step as I grow up? Get a PhD. So the University of Arizona said to me, no, sorry, we won't let you get a third master's degree. Go ahead and enter the doctoral program, which I did. Believe it or not, for those of you who say, oh, I could never do this, it got to the point where I was in that program for so many years. They told me, if you don't finish this program in the next 2 semesters, you're out of here, because it took me 18 years to complete my doctorate.
Wow.
Yep. They said, you're probably going to get an award for the longest time to complete a doctorate. And for some reason, Rod, every time that I would get to a certain point, it would reset the clock and I could start over again with the timing. So I finished in 2008 with a PhD. And what's next as I grow up? And it was, I think I want to go and do this career counseling full time. So I bit the bullet and opened up my own company that I've been running since 2008. And I love it. I really do. It has challenged me on so many levels to create new skill sets, to work on marketing. I do all the billing. I do it all. I'm a one-man show. Yep, there you go. So I think that, for anyone who thinks about, is this something I could do? It is possible. In fact, I just on this, actually tomorrow, I do a weekly video on LinkedIn and Facebook. And tomorrow is going to be about, hey, have you ever thought about starting your own business? And here are the advantages and disadvantages.
Let me ask you something right there. So you create a video, something basically like we're doing now, having a discussion with somebody. You create a video and then you upload it to each one separately, or are you streaming out at the same time? Like I just told you, we stream out to the different social medias, what's the time of that? Or is it just a post?
It's a post.
I mean, okay, so it's not a time issue. It's a post.
So I could post at 3 a.m. Okay.
Right.
And then it'll go live, as live as it can be. And so people get to watch it. And generally, they're probably no longer than 3 minutes each, because I have to think about people's attention spans today.
Sure.
Yeah. And
that's a big deal these days.
Yes, less is more. So it was really funny when someone first said to me, you need to stop posting just verbiage, okay, on your LinkedIn page, and you need to go
to. What
is
your page? Well,
it's basically you just go to my name, David Petrovay, okay, and you'll find the link to the most recent, actually all of the videos that I've done. They're posted.
Under the post. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and when I first started that, it's like, I can't do this. I just don't feel comfortable in front of the camera, and I'm going to make mistakes. And what I learned, Rob, was that, you know what? People want to see the human side of you. They don't want to see perfection, okay? Because that's something they might never ascribe to. But hey, I can be human. I can say the wrong thing. I can trip over my own words. Sometimes I have to re-video it 4 times before it's even acceptable in terms of getting it online. But again, the more I do it, the more comfortable I become with it, just like anything else. And so it's always good whenever you're starting something new, keep some type of a record of what your initial performance was like, because after a while, you can go back and look at that and say, wow, have I grown in terms of my abilities?
Idea. Yep. That's a really good idea. I remember when I first started in sales, the very first real sales job that I had was for a company called Minolta. You know the camera?
Oh, yes.
Minolta. I used to sell office equipment. That's back when they had word processors instead of computers quite yet. It was basically electric typewriter, right?
Right.
So anyway, that was my first job out of college. No, I was still in college, but they videotaped you giving a presentation to the different pieces of equipment, and I was so scared back then. I was dripping wet. I was flushed, so it was heat. So I was, oh my God, I look back at that before and what a difference. That was really early on, but that's a good idea. I like that, folks. That's a really good idea. I love that.
Well, and if you write reports, keep a copy of the first report you ever wrote. And then after you are really good at it, go back and read it. And then you cringe. I can't believe that was the best that I could do at the time. And as time passed, I would get better and better, of course. So when, people are sitting in interviews, they can tell those stories about, well, when I initially began, this is how it looked. And I can even give you an example of that. And here's the way it looks today. And I hope that they will be impressed by the change.
Oh, you know what? I told you we're like at 480 shows now. So obviously a lot of experts have come on the show, different subjects and different coaching subjects and so forth. But the way you just put that, and I see where we're going here, in that you're talking about basically as you're changing or pivoting or going through a transition, and now you're in the interview process. What great tools that nobody else ever uses. And I've never heard anybody say that, but during the interview process, they always ask you, what thing did you handle, or, this or that, or whatever their interests are in trying to get who you are as a person, never meeting you before. And now they're going to potentially employ you. Well, you could be forward thinking in this and say, oh, that's a great question, this and that. And also I want to show you just how my skills have transitioned, and give them the 2 documents you're talking about now. That I've never heard before. And that's probably one of the most brilliant things I've ever heard.
Well, when I used to do vocational evaluations for the students.
Wow, that's good.
The initial one was about 4 to 5 pages. And when I left that position, they were typically about 17 pages.
Whoa.
There was so much more depth to them, because I now knew what I was looking for and how to report that. So if someone was hiring me where report writing was part of it, I would obviously redact the names, just black them out for confidentiality. But at the same time, they would see the value of the content. And by the way, those reports were done, oh boy, probably over 20 years ago. Do you know those students still have those reports that they refer to?
No kidding.
Yes.
That's impressive. That is impressive. Let me jump on something. Branson's got a question for you here, because we're kind of just getting into this now, right? Just a little bit moving forward. And he's kind of got a little bit of a different act. It sounds like Branson here wants to make a change, isn't necessarily forced to, because sometimes you can't pivot without risking financial stability. I mean, sometimes you're asked to leave, right? I mean, or the company closes, or there's different reasons for a pivot. Obviously, yours was you could take those steps. What do you think? Oh, by the way, there's 300 people on now.
Wonderful.
Wow. In 20 minutes. That's pretty good. That's fast. That's really fast. We got some really good questions too. So do you mind if we take a couple of these right in here?
Let's do it.
All right. So Branson wants to know, how can someone start a career pivot without risking financial instability?
Yeah.
Risking financial stability.
And Branson, that is something that I talked about in the video that'll go up tomorrow. And that is one of the disadvantages, is that there can be financial instability. So you need to have, or anyone considering this change needs to have, a solid plan in place. You need to know, probably through the development of a business plan, what this is going to cost you initially, and then what your plan is to support yourself during this time. So let's say that the business or the career pivot might involve $8,000 to $10,000. Okay, you want to ask yourself, where's that money going to come from? Do I have enough in savings that could sustain me during this time? Are there other resources that I could tap into? Do I need to go into some of my investments? And when you're also thinking about this, you want to think about the value of what you're going into next. Is this something that has a future where there will be a return on my investment? And what might that look like? Again, part of your business plan. This is what my plan is. This is what I'm going to be charging. And in this amount of time, this is what I expect to get back that will cover that initial investment. Now, in some cases, you may have other resources. I happen to be partnered to where if I didn't have the money, it came from someone else. So I didn't have to worry about keeping a roof over my head. Every one of these issues needs to be taken into consideration as you make this decision about the financial stability. And clearly putting, that number one is going to make a difference for you in terms of your success. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's the great advice. And by the way, at some point along the way here, I'm not going to move it over yet, but in the private chat, you see where the private chat is over there?
Yes.
Can you put in your contact information, and towards the end of the show, which is far from over, but towards the end, I'll see that the little red lights on the private chat, and I can copy and paste that over for the reason we talked about back in the green room.
Okay.
And you did leave those peanuts alone, right?
I did. I didn't touch the green ones. Okay.
Good man. You're my man.
Yeah.
See, Barbie, I'm not in trouble today. So
Yeah.
What's the first step when clarity we're going to pivot a little bit here,
Okay.
feels completely missing? It's a good question, Damien.
Yes. And believe it or not, Damien, that is the biggest issue that clients come to me with, is lack of clarity. If you're not clear on what it is that you want to do next, my job is to guide you through that. So I have a process that I take people through. Rather than putting them through all these tests, we can do that, but I like to just make it conversational, similar to what we're doing now. And there'll be questions like, when you go into a store and there's a magazine rack, what magazine or magazines are you most attracted to? Which ones are you going to pick up? That's going to tell me what their interests are. Okay, and the other one is, remember, as I'm growing up, when you were a child, what did you enjoy doing most? That will give you lots of clues as to where a natural interest would be. Now, I look at my own life, and if I was to answer that question, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I'd be in some type of structural engineering program. However, remember, along with that interest, you have to have the skills, the aptitudes to go along with it. So unfortunately, with my aptitude towards science and math, I would have been limited in the type of work that I could do. But the other thing I enjoyed doing was talking with people. So that led me into the work that I do today. So I take them through, what are your interests? What are your values? Because many times when people aren't clear on what their values are, they may step into a work situation that they find to be toxic in the future. Because the way you look at the work that you do is going to be very different from the people who employ you if they have a different set of values. We take a look at your personality type. Now, I am qualified to do the Myers-Briggs. So we find out what one of your 16 personality types is, and we talk about how you use this on the job. And then finally, your skill levels. Do you have the skills necessary in order to be successful in the work that you do? So when you look at these 4 areas, and you address them, or when I address them with a client, they give us the clarity that's needed. Now, I'm going to give you a little tip, okay, which is probably counter to what some people might say. Well, you're giving away a trade secret. What I've started to do was to take those 4 pieces of information and feed them into AI. And so I will put the prompt in, what types of occupations involve, and then I list everything that we've just talked about, these specific values, these skills, where I like to work. And you would be surprised, in seconds, AI will give you a breakdown of what your options might be. And they'll say, I never thought of that before. That fits perfectly into what I want to do. So that's how you can use something like Chat GPT, AI, whatever your AI program is. I'm not a supporter of one over the other, but it's going to give you some information that's going to be really valuable in taking those next steps toward clarity.
Okay, so this is interesting here. I'm gonna keep us right in this area here for a second. I'm gonna ignore you guys. Hold off. I'm gonna take over the conversation for a second here with my new best friend David. And I'm curious. So you said a number of things. Like I said, I met a lot of experts in different fields and so forth. And every once in a while, somebody comes along that comes from a different angle. You know, the approaches may change here and there a little bit, but what you're saying now is very fascinating. And I don't want to clarify what you're saying. I totally get it. But what do you think caused your direction in this? Like, I really like that when you were talking early on about we can take all these tests and all that and figure out things, but I like creating conversational. And you talked about, if that magazine rack had a bunch of different magazines on it, what ones would you pick to be most interested in? And boy, that's instantly Time magazine popped into my head when you asked that question. But that's something that's a shift, that's a difference. And now you're also then taking and integrating, I assume this was an evolution. Now using AI and I use AI a lot. I have to, because, well, we're both single people, one man shows, right?
Right.
So you need an assistant, you need an agent to really do a lot of the monotonous stuff that it really takes, and you teach it over time. So it's now bringing your voice into it, but it's fascinating. What caused you to get into that style in your coaching? Do you understand the question I'm asking? Am I asking it right?
Yes, you are, Rod. So
Okay.
I think, what I talk to people about is, if you're old enough, do you remember the days when we were introduced to computers?
I do.
Oh my gosh, they're going to
100%.
take over our jobs, okay? The computer is going to be the replacement for workers. Well,
Yep.
it hasn't replaced us. It's a tool.
It's done the opposite.
It's done the opposite.
Because
Exactly.
now we're more efficient, right? Now we're more efficient, so we can actually do more work. But on top of that, can I just inject into this part of the conversation? At that same time, when people were my age back then, because the home computer, the internet, mobile phones, there was a big, back then was a big technology boost, leap, whatever you want to call it. That's nothing compared to what AI is doing. But back then, people my age, there was a huge depression. So it's smart talking about this and doing the basics and getting involved in it, because otherwise you're going to be cut off from the world. I mean, the people back then were the family, this and that and this and that, but they didn't know how to do all this stuff. And they felt stupid asking their kids who are natural with it because they were born into it, right? Well, look what's happening now. It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing, because I remember going to the university, and this would have been in the 60s, that there was one floor that was dedicated to mainframe computers. And they were climate controlled, okay, because they would get so hot. And unless you were authorized, you could not go into that room to be around them. And now
Yep.
look at what we're doing right now. Okay. So a lot of this was an evolution from then to, I think my first computer was a Radio Shack computer where you just worked with the function keys to do all of the commands. You
Yeah.
didn't even have a mouse. You just
Right.
had the function keys. So that was my introduction. And then I remember being introduced to using a mouse. And the person said, we're going to start by playing games, just so you get used to eye-hand coordination, which we didn't have to do before. So
Mhm.
it was just one step after another. It's like putting the frog in the water where you raise the temperature up slowly so the frog doesn't realize what's happening. Well, this was
Yep.
our version of that with computers.
What a journey that was. So you were talking about it, and we're getting into what caused you to go down this style. I don't know what words to put on it, but you know what I'm asking.
Right. And you know, Rod, the thing is, I didn't even think twice about it. I think because
Wow.
I had been through that computer experience initially, I knew if I looked at this as just a tool and not a replacement, it was going to serve a very different function. And that's exactly how I look at it. Here's a tool. I need to learn how to use this tool in the 21st century because it is not going away. And I think what we're seeing as time passes is the acceleration of these processes. So
Oh,
for
and
many
and
years,
it's gaining momentum. I mean, AI is literally, the world is going to change. I mean, it's changing. AI. Well, Google is AI, so it's been around for a
right,
while, But I mean, literally, I believe that AI, similar to what the prediction for computers was, I think there's going to be a utopia to the point where so much product and services cost is going to come down so much because of the work of that's starting. It's already in our infrastructure, but when it really starts to take hold, because it's going faster and faster and faster and faster, the Jetsons aren't coming, folks. They're here.
right.
We're in that time now, but I think there's a utopia coming because of all that cost that I think will be a lived experience. I'm not a predictor or an expert of any sorts, but it just seems that way. I hear all these I mean, Elon Musk is already saying commercial robots, they're going to be one in every house. Now, whether you think of him or whatever, but I mean, dude, this guy is one of those change makers. I mean, this guy is like what's this, Tesla. He's a Tesla of his time, right? He's a Einstein of his time. There's very few generational, but look what this guy's built. So he kind of knows what he's talking about. And flying cars right around the corner. I mean, basically they're here, unmanned cars, driverless cars. The world's going to, 10 years from now, I think, right? I think we're going to see a lot of difference. Don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And people can say, well, we're either living in fearful times or exciting, fearless times because of
That one,
what's ahead of us. Again, it's
that
what
one.
we do with our attitude toward change.
Yeah.
If you fear it, you resist it, you'll get left behind.
A lot of people do too.
I
I
know.
was 2 years ago, my second granddaughter was born. She lives just across the border in Texas here. Well, her and her family do. But anyway, on her 1 year birthday, I was there, and I was chatting with my son's wife's mom, her grandmother. Good friends, good people, great people. But she and I were talking over sodas or something, and we got onto AI. And she's afraid of it. So she just wants to stick her head in the sand and pretend it's not there. But I mean, she's still got a huge amount of life ahead of her. She's my age. She's our ages ish. And she's going to be run over. She's not going to, what is it? Thrive or survive? What do you want to do? Thrive, or do you want to maybe survive? That's what AI is it's going to 10 years from now, it's going to be a completely different world. I can't imagine, that it's not going to be what, the Jetsons, I think are the best way to put it.
And I think, with people who are older, who are not used to something like AI,
Sure.
start simple. Remember, like I said, the guy told me, just play a computer game.
Mm-hmm.
Back then it was Pong, I think, that was the original.
Oh, I love Pong.
Yeah. But again, eye-hand coordination. So with, your daughter-in-law's mother,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, with her, what would be a simple prompt? Something like, give me a recipe for. Now that's pretty non-threatening, right?
Oh, yeah.
It will do it.
Yeah, and it'll give you a good recipe.
Yeah. Give me I'm going to a dinner. Give me a good recipe for, and in some cases you can say for a dish that includes, and you put in some of the ingredients. Okay.
Yep.
Wait a minute, I have to get rid of a screen here.
Emails, you can copy an email somebody sent you and put it in there and say, make a perfect response to this. And it'll do that. A calendar, say you're still involved in the kids' sports or whatever, you're an active social person, create a calendar for me that includes these activities. I mean, there's so many very non-scary, very efficient things to do. And a lot of Chat GPT and others, they're at no cost.
Right.
So, I mean, it's ridiculous not to do that because you're saving yourself. You have a personal assistant that doesn't cost you near a damn thing. Now I have some upper Chat GPTs that creates images and does all sorts, the thumbnail images I do on the Chat GPT. So yeah, you got to be able to do that stuff, right?
Start simple. Just start simple with like a no mistake prompt.
That's beautiful.
Right. Oh, here's one. Write a birthday greeting.
Ah,
okay?
Yes.
And it will do that for you. And write a birthday greeting to my granddaughter. Write a birthday greeting to my best friend.
It's a good idea.
Yep. Then you see.
I love that.
Helps you. Yep.
Let's make a little bit of a change here with these questions are all freaking over the place. Remember I told you I like to get off and try and organize them as best I can, but they're coming out of all different directions. So, but can a mid-career professional reinvent without starting from zero? We talked about that in the opening monologue. So there's a lot of different, I'm realizing now how many different things are involved when you're making a career change or you're pivoting for whatever reason that is, starting a new business. There's so many emotional points and tags and learning things. Because if you're starting a new business, no matter how much there's a lot of things you haven't been exposed to before, like you said. And you got to keep practicing to get comfortable with it. But once you and I don't know how to pronounce this name. It must be a company of some sort. Looks like she's open to work too. Okay,
so if it's Amy, I'm hoping it is.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Can mid-career professionals reinvent without starting from zero? I'm going to give you a two-letter answer. No. Okay, because when it really depends on how you define zero. So given the work that you're doing right now, I don't know what that would be.
Right.
Let's say you said, oh, I want to be a brain surgeon and I have no experience around this. That might be the closest thing to starting from zero, because zero means absolutely no. You have no interest, you have no skills, you don't have the personality for it. And if that's what zero looks like for you, it will be a challenge. We have something that we refer to in the work that I do, and you may have heard of this. They're called transferable skills. Now, transferable skills mean there are things that I can do today that I can carry over into the work that I'm considering doing. So for me,
and you've done that each step along the way as you're talking about And there's a lot of questions about transferable, by the way, so we're hitting it perfect here.
Good.
But as you went from a teacher to all the way through to what you're doing now, each step had transferable skills, right? We talked about that.
Right. And I am using them right now. What I'm doing at this moment is no different than when I stood in front of a class and did a lesson. This is nothing more than delivering information, which I'm used to doing. Now, I say to people, here's an area, for instance, being a car mechanic. That would be close to zero for me. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That was just not something I was ever trained to do. And so if I wanted to do that, most likely it would mean that I would have to go back to school or some type of a trade school to learn that. Or I find someone who could teach me those skills. And again, start out small, like, okay, I can change the oil. I could, I would look at what the various tasks were that required and ask myself, how close am I to being able to perform the duties around that? If you look at, the idea of starting at zero and your analysis of it is, I'm at zero at everything. Okay, is this something I want to think about? Or do I go back to AI, fill in what I think my transferable skills are and say, hey, what types of occupations would include this? Now, one of the words that we use, and in the book that I wrote, I clarify it. We talk about changing careers. We don't really ever change careers. We only have one. It is the sum total of all the work that you've done, both paid and unpaid, throughout your life. What you change are occupations. Okay.
Ooh.
Okay. You're simply changing occupations. So a career comes from I think the French word carrière, which means a course, like a race course. And it just keeps going and going and going. And when you get to the finish line, you're no longer working. Okay. But it's not like, oh, well, if I have a racehorse, I don't take it so many lengths and then stop the horse and then decide what I want to do next and say to the horse, okay, now we're going to go to the next length. No, it's one length after another until you finish the course. It's the same with your career. So I would say, Amy, look at what your transferable skills are. What is it? Just make a list of the skills that you're currently using, okay, and whether or not you want to continue using them in your next occupation. Feed that into AI and let it tell you what its thoughts are.
I love your approach, man. It's a holistic approach. Like I said, there's emotions, there's all these things that go into these. Change is stressful. Just the brain doesn't like change because it likes doing what it's doing. It's easy. That's why you get stress and not stress. Well, yeah, stress when buying a house, getting married. Any of these things are stressful, so to speak. And I love your approach because I'll use the word holistic.
Right.
It's how to think about what you're doing, what approach, tools that you can use, and the soft stuff as well. You got to emotionally prepare for this stuff as well.
Right. That's
now
true.
we're kind of Kobe's kind of building on Amy's question. If you take a look, how can educate? Now this is more of a specific. Now we know what he does. He's an educator. It sounds like Kobe is. Translate their skills into industries. And you've already kind of hit on, you've hit on this, but can you build this one out for, like I warned you, some of this might come about that's similar, but just can you build on it from his question?
So there are so many transferable skills that educators can bring. I was just thinking about what I did in the classroom. One of them was I created lesson plans. So it is planning, okay? Looking at all of
project management.
Project
management.
Project management. Tons of that. When we would do one time we built a volcano. That was project management, telling them, this is how we put it together. And then obviously your communication skills are going to be paramount. Your ability to speak in front of others. Okay.
100%.
Your
Yeah.
observational skills. You had to observe your students, where they were running into problems, and then there's problem solving. Okay. How can I
Yes.
find something that works for this specific student? And so again, you can go and just Google, or if not, address AI with what are all the transferable skills that teachers have that can be used in other settings. And wait till you
I'm
see what
gonna.
it tells you.
Yeah. No, that's that. I love that. And just staying there for a second. Curious. What name some things that you use AI for? Say ChatGPT.
Oh, so when I have a client who is trying to figure out what they want to do next as part of their career,
Right.
we actually will do screen sharing where they will say to me, okay, based upon what we come up with in terms of a job that might suit them, we can feed into it what companies are currently hiring with this description of who I am. It gives you the names of the companies. Then it gives you what their job openings are. Then it allows you to take your current resume and feed it into the job description, and it will rewrite your resume to fit that. So that's one way that I use it. Okay.
Yep.
When I'm writing, I also write books. So if I'm looking for information specific to a topic, I can certainly look that up on AI and get
Yep.
its input. Now, what I do is once I get that information, then I'll tailor it. So it's not a verbatim, just a cut and paste. So it's
Right.
like, okay, I'll use this, but I won't use this. A word of caution with AI: don't take it at face value as being the gospel truth. You're going to have to do your due diligence around whether or not it is
100%.
truly legitimate. Okay. Because there are
Yeah.
horror stories out there.
Well, and they're talking a lot about that because AI can also go. Automation is if you want something repeated perfectly every time or a scheduled time, that's automation. I used to consider them the same before my son corrected me and said, "Dad, they're two different things." Also, AI is like something you bounce off of somebody. But the problem with AI still, that's why you have to train AI and why you have people that are watching over if the information, because it can go off on something. It can be totally incorrect, like you just said, and it can what they call hallucinate sometimes, where it'll answer totally off. Just this. What did Brandon call it? Like they go berserk or whatever. You got to really make sure that you're double checking all that stuff. I always have it read back to me. I like to hear it as well as read it because it's important, especially when you're writing. You can't publish that out in the world and then have somebody come back 6 months later. Hey, I was reading your book and what?
Mhm. Or, you ask for it to do a technical analysis.
Exactly. Yes.
That could be treading into dangerous waters. Okay.
Hold on. Let me pack. I skipped a couple because I was trying to line them back up there. So let's go back to David. How long should someone stay in the planning phase before acting? And I think this may vary to the point of, well, you got to be comfortable. You got to be satisfied that whatever you're setting up is in place in order to make that step. Is that kind of how you would answer, David?
Yeah, I think that, that's a great question about the planning phase because that's critical.
Click it.
And having a specific plan as much as possible. So once you become clear, and we're going to what they call in education scaffold in terms of information. Yeah. Once you're clear on what it is that you want to do, what is it that's going to get you there? And I think you talked about that in the introduction. Rod, was, how do you get there? And I think that that's where you can do it on your own. Again, AI can help you plan it out. Okay, all the steps that are needed. Generally, once the clarity takes place, the planning accelerates. because you know what your end goal is.
Oh, I
Okay,
see.
what the
I see what you're
target
saying.
is.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
And so it's like, okay, how quickly can I get there? And then, of course, it also depends on, do you have other people involved in the process? Because we conduct something called informational interviews. When it's an area that you are unfamiliar with, go to talk to people who currently do it. Get their take
What,
on
what do
what
you
works.
mean by that? What do you
Okay,
mean by that? That you're unfamiliar with? Where the job or the what? I'm not making that connection.
okay.
What are you unfamiliar with?
All right. So what happens is, and I think Amy was asking, where you're starting maybe at zero. Well, there's someone out there who is not at zero. They're way beyond all of that. So you find who these people are. You can use LinkedIn, you can use your
Ah, gotcha.
network, and you reach out to them and you say, hey, could I get about 15 to 20 minutes of your time? I have some questions I'd like to ask you about the work you do. People love to talk about the work they do.
You. They
They do.
do.
And so you arrange for that conversation. You have your questions in front of you so that you don't deviate. And then you say to them, what advice would you have for someone who's in my position? And you briefly explain what that is. And they'll give you lots of advice about what you can do. I always end with the same question. Do you know of someone else that I might speak to about this? So you're growing your network. Now, you're not saying to them, well, you didn't give me what I need. The more information I have to work with, the better informed I'll be as I move forward with this decision in terms of a new occupation. So those are what we call informational interviews. Actually, when I was changing from being an educator to the work I do today, I think I did 5 of them. I always ended with the same question at the end, and they would refer me. And oh, by the way, could you do a virtual introduction to that person for me? And they would. And then with the very last person, she said, wow, in talking to you, I would love to have someone like you on our staff, but we're not hiring. 2 weeks later, I get a call from her. We have an opening. Would like for you to apply. And I worked there. It was a short time. It wasn't a good match for me. And so I learned very quickly it was time to move on to try something else to where I am today in running my own business. Okay.
I don't know if you just perfectly volleyed the ball back to me to set Clive up for the next question, or if that was just coincidental luck. But on that point that you just said, what signs indicate, like your last job, a career no longer supports your life?
Oh boy, Clive, have I got stories around that one? Okay,
Oh yeah.
remember, I had done this for 34 years. I won awards for the work that I did, by the way. When I reached that 34th year, I became what we refer to as a clock watcher. I would get in as late as I could. If the start time was 8 a.m., I'd get there at 7:59. If the end of the day was at 4 p.m., I would leave at 4:01. Being a clock watcher is definitely a sign. The other thing I did was I was chosen to do a presentation at a conference. And I mean, obviously, I feel very comfortable talking in front of people. It was the worst presentation I ever did. People were walking out, and I
Ouch.
didn't blame them. It was so bad. What it taught
That's
me
funny.
was not that I was a failure, it was another sign. It was time to leave. The other one had to do with
Oh, because the energy wasn't there and the
motivation.
that the motivation wasn't
Yep,
there. Oh,
yep.
okay. Yeah.
And then the
Go
other
on, go on. You said there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the other one was creativity. What was happening in the workplace was that I would go to my supervisor and say, hey, the clients that I'm working with are telling me about a need that they have. I think I have an idea for how we could address that. The response was, that's not why we hired you. So when you
Okay.
get that unmotivating feedback,
Yeah.
that's a sign that it is time to look elsewhere. If that environment no longer supports who you are, to the work that you do or want to do, then it's time to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I referred to this report or this study that was done years ago. It's about centurions. You know what a centurion is, right?
Yes.
So somebody who lives over 100 years old. So they found, they chose to study certain locations because there were pockets, so they could compare. You know, why are centurions in a pocket here and pocket all over the world? Different elevations, different weather. There's one here in Kansas, but different cultures, different food, all that. Nothing was they couldn't find a connection. But then what they've started figuring out, like the monks, they have a mission, right? They have a journey, a mission in life. And they found through this study that, and I'm connecting it to what you just said, I promise. But they found that if somebody has a mission in life, something that drives them, like the creativity that you just used as your last example, if that is gone, you know, they used to say people would die like a year after they retired from
Yes.
their job, you know, because now their identity is different. It's gone. My identity 2 years ago was a completely different identity than what I have today. But what I did is picked up a mission. And what you're talking about there is if you're in a job that they answer about about what you said, hey, we can do this, and that's their answer, you're not on a mission at that job.
No.
You know, your identity is that's a bad place to be. So another good thing here, and I'm not sure which way he's going from, but how can professionals avoid reacting emotionally to opportunities? That could be overreacting, being too emotional, like too excited for it, or is this I have an opportunity and it didn't work out, and I'm being emotional about not getting it.
Right.
I don't know how we and David, if you want to clarify this, or David, if you know, what do you, how do you say this to David?
All right. So just from what David has written there are two ways that you could look at this. One of them is the initial exposure to the opportunity. What does that bring up for you in terms of emotions? Now, what I've learned is since I left the field of education, I've been exposed to lots of opportunities that have not gone anywhere. Okay. And that's okay. I was excited. Usually it was working with another person, collaborating,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
we would come up with this incredible idea for a business. And generally what would happen would be the other person would lose interest in it for some reason. So yeah, we'd put together a business plan, we'd do everything that you're supposed to do, but somehow it just died on the vine.
Yeah.
So what I learned was, okay, what was it about that opportunity that caused that excitement for me? That's what I want to focus on. And that's what I want to make sure that I'm including in the work that I do. So is it, I get excited about the planning. Well, I love to plan. Okay, that's not the problem. It just didn't work in that situation. And then with the ones that didn't work out, I say there's a 4-letter word that goes along with that. It's not what you think it is. Next.
We talked about that word. We talked about that word earlier, didn't we?
Yep. And it's just the word next.
Yeah.
Next. It's
Yeah.
just a string of opportunities that are going to be presented to you. Again, it's what you do with them. And let your emotions be a guide for that. Because there will be things that come up as opportunities. You're going to look at that and say, no way. No, that just would not get me excited about waking up in the morning and doing this type of work. So there's the next, as opposed to, oh yeah, I could really see myself doing this type of work. So right now I'm co-writing two books with someone. That keeps me motivated. We've been working on it now for 2 years. It's in the final stages of publication. I know. And so again, that opportunity was one that took root. Others will not take root. They may sound good, but ultimately, if you know yourself well enough, you're going to say, great idea. Someone else needs to do it. It's not for me.
I like that.
Okay,
like
let
that.
someone else do it.
You know, have you ever heard of the boomerang effect? The emotions and the vibes that you send out into the world, attract accordingly, right?
Yes.
So to build on Clive, no, was it Clive? No, it was David. To build on David's point there, this one, same thing you were saying. Next, because the attitude. Have you ever? Do you believe in that humans we send out vibes? You
Oh,
you
we
call
do.
it vibes, but
We're all
sends
energy.
out frequency.
Yep.
Exactly. And the 6 feet, around it goes out to 6 feet. That's why you can kind of feel somebody coming up from behind you.
Mhm.
You get that gut instinct. So, if you're saying next, in other words, your emotions are staying in the positive end of whatever that is. That one wasn't good for me. Somebody else needs to. I love that idea, and somebody else really needs to do that. That approach is sent out into that vibe is sent out into the world, and thus attracting more opportunity, more instead of being, oh man, and then now those vibes are going out, right? And you're going to get
Right.
less opportunities.
That's
right?
true. Absolutely.
Well, my friend, hey, by the way, as I'm doing the closing, be sure and put in that contact information because there were
Okay.
some really good questions here.
Can you
But,
guide me on this in terms of how I put in my contact information, Rod?
You know where the private chat is, right?
Okay, see what's happening is, I see where it is on the right for me. Yeah.
Click on that. Click on that.
Wait a minute.
Click on the private chat. Like here. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to do this. Hey, sorry guys, we're going through something. Just hang out.
We're problem solving here. Oh, chat
we
with
are.
everyone in the studio. Here it is. I got it. Okay, and
So now just put in whatever contact information you want. For some reason, it doesn't allow you to put it right into the comments. I don't know why, but I'll copy and paste it over. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass. I wish they'd do something. I don't know if it's because like if we got in a fight and you started commenting, you're such a blah, blah, blah. I don't know why they do that. I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna hit the send button.
Okay,
and there it is.
Perfect. All right, there we go. So
Okay.
you have your email, and you have your website.
Yes.
Perfect. So
Okay.
now I'm going to magically have this. I'll tell you what, while I'm doing this, why don't you, you've got 300 and almost 400 people. And you know what? This has kind of gone fast. We're over an hour already.
I know.
Crazy. But it's been a lot of fun. But why don't you say, what do you want to leave everybody with? And then I'll copy and paste this over. I'll jump off the screen, jump back on. I'll throw you back in the green room and close it out and come back and meet you back there.
Okay.
Deal?
That's a deal. All right. So for those of you who are listening, if you are among us more seasoned individuals age-wise, okay, remind yourself it's never
I like the way you said that.
Okay, it's never too late. I'm going to give you my age. Okay, I'm 77.
God, you look good, dude.
I thank genetics for that. And so I started my own business at 60, never having run a business before. And like Amy was saying, that was pretty close to zero for me. However, I did have a number of the transferable skills that allowed me to be successful. Part of it was I realized I was smart enough to figure it out. And that's a lot of it, just recognizing that in yourself. And then it was, again, the motivation and the perseverance. I will tell you, folks, in the initial months of my starting a business, There were times where I had one client in the entire month.
Ooh,
So
ouch.
you really have to believe in yourself. And again, it goes back to what you were saying, Rod. It's about what your mission is. What's my purpose? And someone helped me put together a tagline that said, I help people figure out what they're here to do in life and then do it. Okay? So it's about the
Yeah.
plan. It's everything we've talked about today. It's about having someone, I'm just the navigator. You're the pilot. So it's all about what you tell me is important to you, and then how I help create a plan, as one individual said, that will get you there.
That is beautiful. Give a big wave to everybody, and I'll throw you in the green room, and I'll see you on the other side.
All right. Thanks to everyone.
Excellent. Another great show, folks. Just a perfect example of what this show stands for, why we're here, what we do, and very easy conversation to have back and forth. A true joy to be part of there. I just want to bring this over here. I don't know why this does this like this, but sorry about this. I apologize. And so as we wrap up today, I just wanted to take care of some duties that I have here. But as we wrap up this conversation, I want to leave you with this, guys. Career transitions are not detours, right? They're decision points. And what we heard today from David's lived experience and his work with clients is that most dangerous thing you can do during change is to drift. Because when you drift, fear starts making decisions for you. But when you pause, and we talk about pausing, when you reflect, when you build a plan rooted in who you actually are and what you bring to the table, something shifts, right? You stop asking, what job will take me? And you start asking, what environment fits me? That's a powerful reframe. If today's conversation resonated with you, if you're navigating uncertainty, and we talked about that with several people during the show today, or burnout, or a career crossroads, we talked about that today too, didn't we? Then stay connected to this space. Subscribe on our YouTube channel at Rod Duff 1939. Join us on Substack at insightstraighttalk.substack.com, where we publish 3 days a week with deeper reflections, follow-ups, and conversations just like this one. Supporting independent media like Insights and Straight Talk isn't just about watching a show, right? It's about sustaining spaces where real conversations happen without shouting, posturing, or selling fear, you know? And if you're a business or an organization or a professional who aligns with our mission, bringing clarity, dignity, and opportunity back to the great middle class, we do have limited sponsorships and partnership opportunities available. This platform exists because of collaboration, trust, and shared purpose. David, thank you for bringing wisdom, not just advice, to this conversation. And to our audience, wherever you are in your journey, remember this: change doesn't mean you failed. It means you're still in the game. Come on. We'll see you next time on Insights and Straight Talk with Rod Duff, and always with producer Barbie. Stay grounded, stay curious, and keep moving forward on purpose. And please, like I always say, go wave to somebody, say hi to somebody, do something that brings you closer, that enlightens somebody's life today. Small thing, doesn't matter. Just enjoy your life and send out those good vibes. And with that, I am your host, Rod Duff. Stay on the other side of the outro video because I always try and do something goofy. But with that, I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.